Hello, and I think we are live. Thank you, everyone, for joining this fireside chat. I'm really happy to have you here and to talk around AI and citations. Before we kick off, a few introductions. I am James Tappenden. I am the event director for the Affiliate Summit. Hopefully, going to be seeing you all next week in Vegas. But we've got a really exciting webinar fireside chat lined up for you today. I will I'll let the speakers introduce themselves. Michael, over to you.
Hello, everyone. Hey, I'm Michael Cole. So I'm the head of marketing at Everflow. We're one of the partner marketing platforms, and we've gone pretty deep into all of this AI and LLM stuff. And we're just really excited because, to me, I think this just opens up so much opportunity for new growth in our space, and it doesn't require doing extra work, which is the best of both worlds. And Ewan?
Yeah, no, here, Ewan Finzer. I run a variety of different things, but Scale Visible is the overall kind of umbrella agency. We're working to help brands get visibility in LLMs. We also have a very specialized Reddit marketing agency called Red Visible, started about a year and a half ago. And then way back, the horse I rode in on is a media company, Ventureforth Media. And so I come from a publisher background, having been an affiliate. So I understand kind of both sides very well. We kind of sit in a weird hybrid between an agency and a publisher model. And probably we'll get to some of those interesting overlays a little bit later, but that's a little bit about me.
No, thanks, guys. And yeah, it's always nice because you can kind of have those different perspectives when you come to these things. But no, thank you very much. Thanks for taking the time, and thanks everyone for joining. Before we kick off, I'll kind of give a flow of the webinar, if you will. First and foremost, we are going to launch some poll questions. So we will kick off with some poll questions, which should hopefully be in your top right on my screen. But a poll, 2 questions there. If you wouldn't mind answering, we will then have a quick introduction, flow through a few slides. Then we'll get to the juicy stuff. We'll ask some questions and have some back and forth. And we will leave some time at the end for questions. However, we do encourage questions on your way through. We have Krista, who is managing the inbox. So if you have a question as we're going through, please flag it. We'll do our best to get through it and kind of have a stop and take those on as well. And then we'll end with that poll again. I think it's always interesting to see how the poll changes at the start of the webinar till the end. So, like I said, please do get involved, engage with us, because we're more than happy to answer as we go. So before we kick off, Michael, I will probably ask you, for anyone who is completely new to the space, what are LLMs? How does it relate to all this talk around AI?
Yeah, LLMs are very important, and these things all kind of get fuzzy about what words are used for everything. When we're talking about LLMs, we're talking about ChatGPT, Gemini, the Google AI overviews, all the Claude stuff, etc. It's basically any of these new ways to sort of ask questions and get answers that goes under the broad category of LLMs. And a lot of sort of what we're discussing today is sort of how you influence how they respond to things and sort of how that relates to affiliate.
And can I ask you, just as a general question, LLMs, how many do you use in your day to day now, both professional or personal? Because I know I have on a daily basis. I'm constantly.
Yeah, I mean, we use Gemini because our entire thing's built on Google Cloud, so we're trapped into the Google ecosystem, and we're legal says we must stick to only using that one, so we don't use any other ones. But they all sort of work the same way, and they have different strengths and different places where we use them.
But you and similar story your side?
Yeah, I mean, I probably am an anomaly in that I'm using them for the wrong reasons. I'm trying to influence them, and so I kind of use them all for market research.
Fine, perfect. Well, kind of one of the main questions here, and something we're definitely going to talk about is what does this mean for what does affiliate have to do with discovery in the LLMs? Oh, Michael, yeah. Oh, yeah. I was going to say we'll throw it over to you.
Did we lose him?
Oh, sorry, to me or Michael?
To you, and sorry, yeah. So what does affiliate have to do with discovery and LLM?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, having come from the publisher space, I have a unique perspective, but I think, how does affiliate have to do with it? I mean, I think we're in this transitionary period where the model is shifting, right? And so, at the very the most obvious thing that I say to affiliates, anyone in the affiliate ecosystem now, is like, step one, what you're doing is having an impact in AI, whether or not you're aware of it. And so that's like the first thing to do, is all the work that you've probably put in over the years, investing into developing these partnerships. That's all relevant to AI. It's just putting a container around it, and quantifying the gap and quantifying the gains that you're making with these partnerships. And so that's, I think, at the very fundamental level, like, affiliate, whether you like it or not, is impacting AI. And so we may as well get our hands dirty and start describing the value that we're already creating. And that's, I think, what Michael was saying about the work that we've already, been doing. It's you don't have to necessarily do more work. I mean, certainly you can do more things to position yourself, but at the very basic level, partnerships are influencing LLMs, and in a very important way, especially if we think about those influencer editorial, publisher relationships. Those are all like the most important things that are going into the foundations of the LLMs. And so it's a very natural extension. The partnerships and the relationships are all there. It's like the plumbing needs to change. And that's kind of, at least, how I think about it.
For sure. And I think the best way to illustrate this will be to hop into the deck and sort of walk through an example.
Yeah, perfect.
All right. I will take it away. Okay, so this is just a quick, I wanted to have some visualization of like what we're talking about here and an introduction to this. And then obviously we'll hop back into more of the like fluid questions. But this is basically like how affiliate managers drive AI discovery. And so I'm going to be walking through a couple of things here. So one, basically how LLMs generate their responses. So how, when you ask ChatGPT, like, what's the best affiliate software, how does it generate that response? I'll use like a real world example there. And then I'm going to go into a use case example of like what happens when someone asks, like, what are the best Ozempic alternatives? Sort of like, what is the things being cited there? How is that influencing it? And then finally, sort of what kind of impact this has on performance. And I think the best way to think about all this is just basically like the skills of affiliate management directly have the ability to influence what is showing up in ChatGPT and Gemini and everything else like that. And what you're already doing influences this. So this is sort of like, how do you start having this as part of your internal narrative to your leadership, to your clients, whichever relationship you're in? These are things you should be talking up, because you now have sort of like levers to influence this, that is building the relationships with like the right affiliates and publishers and having them talk about you the right way. Okay, so internally we use a tool called PromptWatch for looking at our data. And right now I have a screenshot here of an example. This is from Perplexity, which I think is Anthropic. You can sort of see here the user prompt was like, what are the best platforms for managing affiliates in 2025? And then above that, there's like how visible Everflow is in it. That means like sort of like where were we mentioned, and all the other brands being mentioned in this example. And then underneath that, you can see the response tab, which I'm not looking at, and then the citation tab of 10. So what that citation 10 means is that there was basically 10 different sources that Claude was checking, that Anthropic was checking to generate this response. So it cited a bunch of sources, it got a consensus response from those, and then it generated an answer here. And then two of those examples of citations are this Partner Gap article about best affiliate marketing management platforms in 2025, and this influencer marketing hub. Those were the first two of the 10 sources. And then it used all those sources to basically predict the correct answer, and then it generates the answer. Every single time you ask ChatGPT or Gemini these questions, it's doing a new check for sources through citations, and then it generates a predicted response. So it's basically every single time it's sort of generating something new too. But how it generates that is all of the affiliates and publishers out there and all that stuff. So that's why there's a lot of influence there. Any questions? Good. All right, so we're going to go into a use case example, which is like what happens when a user types into the LLM, what are the best Ozempic alternatives? So again, it's going to answer this question through citations. The citation mix is usually a mix of like, what is the direct brand websites? That's one part. YouTube has a big influence. Video is like a big piece that we'll be pulling from to sort of get these responses of like how to respond to you. The Reddit is a huge influence. A lot of times, like 3 out of the 8 or 10 citations is coming from Reddit threads, where they're trying to get this user-generated content of what people are talking about to determine like how to respond to it. The ones that are more affiliate oriented is like they'll check a bunch of comparisons. So any affiliate websites that are comparing like a bunch of different products, a lot of that is being used for how you'll get your response from like ChatGPT or Gemini. Same thing with like listicles, like what are the best weight loss medication providers? It's going to be looking for those. Again, each time it's a different sampling, so it might not always use the same websites, but over time, as you do it, like the sort of like go-to affiliate listicles and comparison things, those are being pulled regularly for generating a response. And then things like Wikipedia, it takes all these citations, it gets a consensus of like, what do they think? And then it predicts a response that will then give to the user. So an example of that from Gemini, if I ask for Ozempic alternatives, it will just generate a table of like a comprehensive guide of comparing them. So in this case, it's got Zepbound, Wegovy, Mounjaro. And you can see that like key difference, it says Zepbound is the best overall. Like that is the sort of golden ticket of what you want from like influencing all these like, they call it like AEO strategies and stuff like that, or GEO strategies of like how we're influencing what ChatGPT and Gemini give in their responses. And again, like the way you influence that is through all of the publishers you work with, the way that they talk about your brand versus your competitors, the sort of comparisons, all of this user-generated content. It takes all of that and it makes this determination like Zepbound, best overall. And like this sort of pulling of a response where it's giving a strong recommendation based on this consensus, that's very powerful. So an example of that from Ahrefs, they're seeing that LLMs are driving their best buyers. So Ahrefs just released this report on their side of like looking through their data. And they said that like 12% of all of the signups they get from Ahrefs now is coming from 0.5% of the traffic. And these like, that means that these AI search visitors are converting 23 times higher than traditional organic search for Ahrefs. And the reason for that is you're like, oh, how do I know that we don't use them specifically for this, but they have their own like AI prompts and analytics tools for like how this is working. And they know that if someone's being like, hey, how am I going to monitor these like AI prompts and everything? Ahrefs will often be recommended by ChatGPT and Gemini and everything else like that. That user comes to them, they're already bought in. They've been told that Ahrefs is like a great solution or maybe the best solution. And in that situation, they will then take that data. They will, like the user is informed. They know they know that Ahrefs is a good choice thanks to asking ChatGPT. They get to Ahrefs, they immediately sign up. So that's why it has a 23 times higher conversion rate. And again, like every client, every brand wants this kind of data. And if you have the tools to influence this by making sure that publishers talk about you the right way, that all of these affiliate comparisons are talking about you, that you're showing up on YouTube, that you're showing up on Reddit, a lot of this stuff is all about sort of like influencing affiliates and publishers the right way. And it has such a big impact on how you drive more customers and growth coming into 2026. So this should at least be an extra narrative that everyone in our industry is talking about, because if we have some of the influence on who's going to be considered the best or who's going to be ranked number 1 or 2, and any question being asked to ChatGPT, suddenly we're in the driver's seat for how sort of like growth happens. Cool. And that's my quick presentation. Hopefully that gives you some visualization of like what we're talking about, of sort of like going into more of the details.
No, yeah, perfect, Michael. And just to I know we've at the show next week we've got Lily Ray who's going to be talking around SEO, and it's one of our keynote sessions that I've actually seen her talk. I think it was at AWIN Think Tank, not well, last year. A really interesting session, but yeah, definitely one to bookmark if you are coming next week. But how is LLM discoverability different to SEO?
Yep.
Yeah, that's a great question. And there's this debate, right, going on in our SEO world, which I also come from, like SEO versus GEO, and you kind of have the incumbents being the SEO agencies, and they're early on they were saying, this is kind of the same. It's good SEO creates good GEO, and then you have these new GEO agencies popping up saying like SEO is dead, and so you're having this argument happening. In reality, I mean, my belief is like it's kind of like just a kind of pedantic little game that we're playing. At the end of the day, it's kind of both true. It's like, yes, SEO does contribute the building blocks. You look at a brand like HubSpot, they've invested, probably millions of dollars over the last decade in like cementing their position in Google search, and to the point where like you'd search anything around CRMs and they'd be showing up either directly or indirectly through their affiliates. And that foundation they've built really gives them a leg up in LLMs. And at the same time, two things are true at the same time. It creates gaps in their fence, if you will, in their perimeter, where like all of a sudden some vibe coded CRM CRM tool from some guy that just created it is running a Reddit marketing strategy, and he's taking a little bit of market share. And then there's a couple other people coming in. Maybe someone's doing a YouTube focused strategy, and they're swinging outside their weight. And so it's created for the defenders, as we call them. It's created all these gaps in the marketing funnel for them. And so that's I think the one of the other big mental model shifts when we're talking to different brands is this, and Michael mentioned it, like consensus state. We're moving from this paradigm of kind of a zero-sum game where there's like the 10 blue links. I mean, there were never 10 blue links. We've seen that shift, but like if you just imagine in the old days of Google, it's like, there's 10 positions on the first page. If you're not on the first page, you may as well say like where you want to hide. If you want to hide a dead body, put on the second page of Google. Like no one's going on the second page. Well, that paradigm has like really shifted with AI, with ChatGPT. They're pulling from many different sources, a much wider array that's getting synthesized into the consensus, right? And so it's kind of scrunching it down into a little summary, running this complex process in the background. So effectively your page 2 and page 3 and page 4 and even beyond, that is all somewhat relevant. And there's kind of maybe diminishing returns. Oftentimes what we're seeing in Google, like the difference between Google and ChatGPT, right? The 10 blue links or the top cited or ranked references in Google are often also referenced in ChatGPT, but you'd be surprised at how low the correlation actually is. We're finding it's around 20%. So it's certainly a good SEO strategy will help you. But then I think the other variable is the platform diversity, right? So we're going from a Google-centric unipolar world to a multipolar world, where it's like it's like the early days of the internet, 2003 or whatever. You have Ask Jeeves, Yahoo, all these different players, and it's still not clear, where the market shows. I think ChatGPT has some early legs, but then there's a lot of competition, and so in each of these platforms, like Michael alluded to earlier, they're kind of doing the same thing, but they have some different flavors. They have a different index, if you will. They prefer different sources, and so understanding how each platform works is important. It's just super fragmented, but it's, very similar in some ways to SEO. Like it's a familiar motion. As I say, it's the same thing with affiliate marketers. It's a familiar motion, but the impacts and the recipe has changed, and in some ways fairly significantly. So if we just gloss over and say it's the same, you're going to miss a lot of opportunities. And I think it's a particularly exciting time for challenger brands because it's a reset. And so if you can exploit those gaps, which is what we spend most of our time doing, you can basically get in at the ground floor and be early to like the next iteration of discovery. And I think that's what's different to kind of examine the inverse here.
Yeah, and to sort of echo that, like it's very fascinating how like long tail publishers suddenly have so much more influence because they may only be driving a few clicks because they're ranked on like page 10 of Google. No one has ever gotten to that naturally. But now that content's being used as part of these responses. And then the other piece of this is just like sentiment matters. Like the way that they talk to you about you makes a huge difference. Like if they say like it's an overcomplicated product and customers report being overwhelming, that looks really bad when ChatGPT and Gemini are responding on that. So if publishers are saying like, hey, they're super good because they're advanced, they do all this automation, they have all these things like this. If they're talking about all the positives versus the negatives, that stuff gets picked up by ChatGPT in the way that they do their responses, et cetera. So suddenly how publishers talk about you makes a big difference too. And again, this is sort of like where affiliate marketing becomes really powerful because we're all about sort of like relationship management, working with the publishers, make sure that they understand exactly what the product does, equipping them with like sort of like, here are the main features that we're proud of that people buy from us. Like when that shows up on a review website that's page 10 of Google, now the information is being pulled into today's question to ChatGPT. When that user's ready to buy and they're making their final decisions, that's like where it has a huge amount of influence.
Perfect. I'm also I've just had a couple of questions come in, so I'm just gonna go over to those. So from Rutger says, but does the LLM not cannibalize the traffic from your publishers since they gather the information of your affiliates and use them as a source? Michael, do you want to kick off with that one?
Sure. Yeah. So in terms of traffic, it definitely cannibalizes the traffic. What's cool about affiliate though is that it's less clear on the other side. Like you can just assume that all your publishers are going to get less traffic because people are going to start as they get more and more comfortable with it and these like LLMs get better, they're going to be starting with those because it's the easiest way to be like, hey, what's the best 5 like alternatives to Ozempic? That's just really easy and it generates the answer right away. And you can always assume the least friction option is going to win. So people are going to start there. But the thing is that like, especially when we start talking about things like, hey, I'm looking for like a new pair of boots, I want it in this style, etc. You get that answer from ChatGPT of like, here's a bunch of brands. That's kind of like the starting of your journey though. But like, there's only so much information. There's also like not that much extra context. There's not a lot of extra trust there. It's a good starting place. So what do you do once you say like, oh, actually these Red Wing boots are pretty interesting? Then you're going to start looking at, okay, like Red Wing boots reviews, comparisons, etc. You want to have a secondary source because you want to just sort of like make sure that you're actually getting an answer. Like there's not that much for some things like ChatGPT can give you plenty of sources and stuff where you can just sort of make a decision. But there's a huge amount of like the affiliate industry where you really just need some more details before you make a decision. And that's when you're going to go to the affiliate. At that point, you're going to be like half bought into buying before you get there. You see that, you'll see like, oh, here's some like photos, here's a bit more details, here's a little editorial note about it. That's when you click through to purchase. So like I can't see any world where traffic isn't dropping, but I'm not sure how much conversion rates are. I'm like, I can easily see conversion rates going up and the amount of like overall like conversions and purchases actually being pretty strong for affiliate.
Yeah, and Ewan, I'll come over to you, but before I do, just the follow-up comment was surely it's only a matter of time until they become the affiliates themselves and take full credit.
Yeah, but it's like trust really matters on this for making a decision, and just the way their interface works, like there's a lot of trust that they can never provide because like they're giving the same experience for everything, and the same experience for everything is like not the best experience, but it's really easy to start.
Yeah, and I think to the question, I mean, there is certainly I don't want to like diminish the concern. I think it is like obviously for publishers, that's the world I come from, and the reason we pivoted to an agency model was because we kind of saw this is really the Google updates. You know, we saw Reddit coming on strong, and then we kind of exploring Reddit, so we did see that impact, and it is a disruption, right? And I think there's also a world where we're starting to see these integrations, right? Walmart, Shopify. Direct integrating and basically ChatGPT becoming a super affiliate with Shopify, and so I think there is that we're going to see experimentation. You're going to see a lot of figuring it out and trials, and the sky is falling. And I think like what I think Everflow does well, and Michael, speaks to, is like that. Well, let's look at the data, look at the conversion rates. And I think there's a very clear lane there. And I also think, that there is a tragedy of the commons a little bit happening for publishers in the open web, where, basically ChatGPT stole all the content and all the context. It did this land grab. And then publishers are like, well, why would I create original high quality content, which is actually what the LLMs need? And so there's this race to the bottom of generating like cheap AI content because you don't have as much revenue coming in. And so you want to cut corners, but then that poisons the model, and AI can only eat so much of its own tail before it becomes too reductive to be helpful. So there is a challenge there. And I think that kind of gets to like where I think a lot of work has to happen in the industry is on that creative attribution, kind of beyond just the click, click went to the review site and then that converted. So I think work that's being done around the edges of like attribution on the platforms themselves, on ChatGPT, and trying to back into like some models and maybe even give publishers some sort of share of voice, I don't know, fee or something. This is very early, but I think there is some innovation required, and I think it's going to be exciting to see like how the hybrid model kind of evolves to fit this very good question, which is like, yeah, there is cannibalization, and I think ultimately for the publishers and the creators, it's like, well, what about me? And I think there's some work to be done there for sure.
Yeah, but there's definitely a power to the publisher in the situation that we haven't figured out exactly where it fits, but it is clearly built in that publishers are very influential because, again, like if the publisher doesn't talk about you at all and talks about your competitors, that's what's going to show up in ChatGPT and Gemini. And that's going to be people going to your competitors and purchasing from them and things like that. So it's very important that you make sure that publishers are not only like mentioning you, but they're talking about you well, that they're comparing you well and like ranking you well, because that's going to influence how they respond. And if the publisher says like, hey, like we're not making any money, we're talking about your brand, like we're going to have to cut you off, like brands are going to have to switch that. Like they're going to figure out a way to pay. It may not be on a performance basis, but at the same time, like it still ends up being very similar to affiliate, which is like, I need you to talk about me. I need you to talk about me correctly. And I will just give you, say, like $1,000 a month or whatever. Like there's alternative ways to it. But like, if your main website being cited regularly, like you have to be included there or you're just not part of a conversation.
And I would just say also increasing your payouts, right? Like that's another way to do it, to get at that. Like, there's going to be maybe fewer higher traffic's gonna be higher converting, but maybe fewer visits. Okay, let's increase your payout. That's another easy way to solve it as well.
And I know we, yeah. And so if we think about it from the point of view of those affiliate managers, like what are the benefits, what are the opportunities here for the affiliate managers who are doing their homework, training, understanding it, doing all of it, but where are the opportunities for them?
Yeah, so the reason I like this so much is because the skills that have already developed for affiliate managers is the skills that are needed for being successful here, which is basically like, how do I develop relationships with all of the most important like super affiliate publishers? Because I need to make sure that I'm showing up on there, that they're talking about me the right way. And those are going to get cited a lot. But also like the traditional thing of like, okay, now that I've done all my super affiliates, how do I continue to have long tail affiliates that I can talk about on my weekly updates to my boss? Like that's what affiliate managers already do, is that they focus on the super affiliates and the long tail affiliates, and they're already developing those relationships. Now it's sort of like, okay, like let me look up for what are the 5, say, like prompts that best reflect my business. So again, like if I'm a weight loss semaglutide or something, I want to like show up for like sort of like, what's the best way to lose weight in 2026? What are Ozempic alternatives? Like, hey, like I'm thinking about this, like what are the risks, and is there any companies that have really good like customer service? Those types of questions are all like things that I want to make sure I show up in. Then once I have that, you can basically use any of these like LLM monitoring tools to sort of like look at those things. And the way that they work, which I now understand, is that they're actually just pinging that question over and over again to ChatGPT and Gemini. And they'll be like, in the last 100 times we asked them that question, here's everything that was cited in those questions. And you can be like, okay, of the ones being cited, these 20 are affiliate publishers. So now I can then sort of like report like, hey, when people ask this question, these are the affiliate publishers that are showing up there. We're working on them. We've sent them new content. We're giving them a higher commission. We're doing all these things. And here's sort of like the amount of like influence of like, here's examples every week of how we're showing up in this question now, thanks to being talked about by these publishers. Like that's an easy way to sort of like have an early ground where it's like the day-to-day work is the same. Now it's just reporting on a new sort of factor and fitting into the narrative of like, here is how we're growing and how affiliate marketing has gone from a performance silo to basically all SEO and brand growth.
And just to double tap that real quick, because one of my favorite things to talk about is how our org charts are kind of like outdated. Like our 2023 org charts are not really set up for the current moment. There's also this like internal politics land grab of like, who owns this? And so you have like PR being like, no, that's us. And like, maybe the SEO team is like, no, that's my turf. There's an opportunity, I think, for affiliate to tell a story and for affiliate managers in this flux period to kind of claim some ground and educate and be the evangelist. We see this all the time where, we reach out to some of our traditional affiliate partners. We're like, yeah, we kind of work differently now. We're not just going to work on a CPA, but like, this is what we're trying to explain what we're doing. And they kind of take that and run with it. And like, they become the internal change agent to be the, I don't know, Paul Revere or whatever, like riding on the horse being like, hey, and that's, I think, a really powerful position to be in because like Michael said, we have all the tools. Like we have the motion. We know how to do this. We're in some ways the best situated to make this argument. And so if we can almost like redefine your job a little bit and don't wait for maybe necessarily like someone else to tell you that like, you're either obsolete or you're now going to be running AI.
Yeah, no, really interesting point. And to just to follow up on that view, like, so if it is going to be, the affiliate teams that are picking this up, like, what can they do, or how can they start reporting this? So, so how can they start reporting the impact on deliverability? So, what do they need to do? What do they need to say? And how do they help? How does that help them own this space?
Yeah, is that for me or Michael?
For you, and sorry,
yeah. So. I mean, this is also part of the flux that we're in is like all these reference places that you would go to are also in flux. There's a whole explosion of AI visibility tools, starting with like market leaders like Profound and Peak.ai and Scrunch and Evertune. Don't want to offend anyone by leaving them out, but there's like a whole class of new ones. And so they're kind of reporting kind of at a very high level. They're starting to get a little bit more detailed. I think that tells part of the story. You also have your classic tools like Ahrefs and SEMrush. And then you have like the traffic, your traffic sources, you want to kind of match that up. And then you probably have like an Everflow, on the performance side. The truth is there's no easy one-stop shop. And part of this is kind of obfuscated by the platforms themselves not reporting out data, right? There's no Google Search Console for ChatGPT. There's no Google Analytics. There's no paid ads. I think maybe when they release their paid ads solutions, there's going to be more data, but we're operating in the fog of war. And so I think there's a lot of creative engineering and piecing together that has to happen. I'm actually kind of curious to hear what Michael thinks about this, because I know like a lot of what Everflow is doing and historically has done is pretty kind of like cutting edge. And so, I don't know. I'm curious, Michael, what you think about that question.
No, I totally agree. Like, I think we're in this moment where the entire thing is all about like narratives and storytelling. And that's where affiliate managers should start, because again, like the strict numbers are a lot more fuzzy, but the evidence of influence is like obvious. So there's like this mixing of worlds. So I'm always a fanboy of like recommending this one thing for the pure sake of it having a 7-day free trial of using PromptWatch. I recommend anyone who hasn't done this, set up a free trial, just pop in your website. It takes like 20 seconds. And it'll basically be like, hey, here's 10 prompts here's what we think your company does based on your website. Here's your competitors. Here's a bunch of recommended prompts. You turn that on, you're set. It'll start pulling in that data for the week. And you'll start seeing like when these questions are asked, what are the answers every single time? And what are the citations? So when we did this originally, like we set it up, we saw like, oh, wow, there's like 30 or 40 different review websites that we've never heard of that don't rank well, that are being cited regularly. And then we just basically create a hit list and be like, okay, like our partnership person reached out to each one of them to basically be like, okay, like let's get them into our program. Like, let's make sure that they are talking about us. Sometimes we would just be like, here's $500, please like include us in this, etc. That kind of thing, because it's important to make sure that we are part of every conversation as a brand when people are looking up any of these terms. So I think that's the first part. The second thing is, again, once you have that sort of like, here are some prompts that both me and my boss agree are important. Okay, like how many of like the citations are like publishers, and like, are we talking with those publishers? So it's being like, hey, when people ask this question, say like 30% of the citations are these publishers. Are they in our affiliate program? Yes, no. Okay, like we're going to be working to get these in there. Like that's the first part. In terms of like the actual like performance results, I think this is way more fuzzy. The way that we're doing it internally is we're just being like, is there some sort of hockey stick growth for the prompts we're looking at? Like, is Everflow showing up more in them versus our competition? Which sort of like solutions are we showing up more? And sort of like, is it both like our internal strategy of the content we're producing, and is it also more of like citations from the publishers we're actively working with? That's sort of how we do it. But I think right now, like a lot of the actual like analytics part is fuzzy. So it's really about sort of like, do you agree that when someone asks this question of ChatGPT, this is important to us as a brand? And are we taking actions to make sure that we're showing up more often with better sentiment in those responses?
And just real quick, I think what Michael said there is like aligning the North Star, like getting buy-in. I mean, that's honestly half the battles. Like, let's all agree on something, and then like defining those hero categories. That's like half the battle, because that's often the friction we run into is like someone has a report from somewhere that's showing a bunch of prompts, and it's like the lines are going up and down. But it's like, well, let's come to a shared understanding and agree on how we want to measure this in the absence of the holy grail, like source truth.
So we're saying that it's a real opportunity for the affiliate manager to own this for the brand, for the organization. But let's not be doing it in silo. There's an opportunity to sit down, understand, and as you mentioned, Ewan, really important to get the buy-in, but understand what is important to the brand. So if you are going to lead it, yes, obviously, please do. But that consultation internally, I think, is going to be key.
Yeah, and one thing to just mention on that too is like the reason I keep talking about this, even though this stuff is fuzzy and we're almost all a performance marketing type of field, is the fact that like your day-to-day is the same. So it's more of like in your weekly updates, here's something cool and exciting that you can share with your leadership or client. That's the key piece of it, because again, like it is a little bit different, but this sort of like opens the scope of affiliate management without changing the like day-to-day workload.
We've got a few more questions coming in, so we'll switch over and make sure we get over to those. So Michael, we'll go you for this one. Do you see AI discovery changing how we evaluate affiliate incrementally compared to traditional organic search?
Yeah, I think incrementality is always a very messy situation. A total tangent. Like I've talked to like a lot of like large affiliate managers at like large brands, and just like how affiliate is measured is so arbitrary in most like large things, because it's usually done through like an MMM, like the like mobile like media mix like measure, or like mobile, whatever they are, the media mix measurement companies. and it's very much based on like what is their assumptions about what drives performance. And usually if you're using a third-party tool, they don't really understand the difference between like a content affiliate and a coupon affiliate, and they just all bundle into one thing, and so they really devalue affiliate in their measurement. But then other companies that built their own internal solutions tend to really highly value affiliate because they understand affiliate is many different buckets, and especially in this current world, like content review websites and listicles now have even more influence than before. So the incrementality, it just depends on what questions you're asking and which tool you're using. But I think in terms of just like the like going back to like first principles, now affiliate is just even more influential because for every single sort of click you get and conversion you get from your affiliate, especially like the more content ones that you develop, you're also getting a secondary value on it. So that's where I go there. But again, like we're in this like sort of gray zone where it's really about how you report it and how you talk about it more than it being like objective.
Ewan, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think Michael hit it right on the head there.
Yeah, we touched on the brands a tiny little bit there. There was a question in from Amy as well, and yeah, I think really poignant is, do you think the trust in LLMs will decrease if users realize that brands are starting to influence the results? And Ewan, we'll just start with you there.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is like one of the big questions, right? It's and even Sam Altman had made a comment months ago about how surprised he was at how infrequently users were checking the citations, like they're just accepting. And I think that the trust is the currency of these platforms, but so far it seems like there's a high degree of trust. That could change, and I think this is maybe connected to some other thoughts about like what do we see. I don't want to get too far into projections, but I do think there's going to be, just like with Google, and I lived through this in the last decade, going from the Wild West, like keyword stuffing, redirects, being able to work to like it becoming more professionalized. We had like the Google web spam team, John Miller and like all those folks like coming out with, everyone would live and die based on the Google updates. I think these platforms are going to have to start policing their context or their sources, right? And so there's going to maybe be competing theories or rules, right, of the road that are going to start to either explicitly or implicitly start to become public knowledge. There's going to be like a professionalization of AEO, GEO. And so, I think this is going to be it's always going to be an ebb and flow of like, there'll be like some sort of scandal, or like, I think even Ahrefs had a study out recently where they basically, I don't have the case study handy, maybe someone has it, but like where they it basically made up context to show how easy it was to influence. And so I think there is that element. I mean, we're a media company, so we have 100 plus websites. We have some domains that were de-indexed by Google over the years. Some of those are highly cited in ChatGPT. And so there's like this, not to say they're necessarily bad sites, it's just whatever. Like we're kicked out of one index, but like here we are showing up another one. So like, is this a quality source? It seems like there's different opinions. I do think that's going to be, something for sure. And it's like, so do I think that? Yeah, I think will trust decrease? I mean, I think there will be this ebb and flow for sure. But the nice thing about having a multipolar world is that there's competitors, right? So it's like, there's going to be, maybe Perplexity is going to stand on quality, or they're going to make a stand. They're going to cut out they're going to start policing AI content, generating content, and just focus on human. I mean, that's really Reddit's, but then why we have this Reddit agency, why it's so important. It's like Reddit has positioned themselves as we are real people having real conversations. And that's why they're incredibly valuable, and Google and ChatGPT, OpenAI both have licensing deals to direct ingest that sentiment. Now, Reddit is also being influenced. And so there's there's this constant tension. And yeah, I think there will be some erosion of trust, but I think it will be a cat and mouse type of game over the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, I think the other part is like, to some degree, the trust doesn't matter, because it's very like, the easier something is, the more it wins. And I mean, you can sort of see this with like the Google AI overviews. Like, I feel like when I ask a question and Google gives me an AI overview, it's like wrong 25% of the time. I still just do that because like 75% of the time it's right. And it's like, how do I do like a spreadsheet or whatever? Like, I just want the right, like an answer that I can test right away. And if it doesn't work, then I'll do more research. But I just want it fast. And this is a very fast way to get a response to everything. So even if it's wrong some of the time, and if I'm making a big decision, that's where, again, like I'm going to go to affiliate publishers and do other research, look for other sources. But if I'm making a quick decision, I'm okay with risking it being wrong 25% of the time if the consequences of that are low and it takes me very little time to find.
Yeah, and obviously talking about brand affiliate publishers, like being able to influence what the LLMs display. But Michael, kind of starting with you, could you like kind of open the hood a little bit, please? Like explain a bit more on how this works, why affiliate managers are in the driver's seat here, having their company's brand talked about in the right way.
Yep. Yeah. Just to go back to the basics of this, when a question is asked of the LLM, so you ask a question, ChatGPT, it will generate a predicted response using all of its information and data. It'll be like, okay, like what is the correct response for like, what are the trendiest boots in 2026? It will then try to respond to that. And the way it does it is it's going to be citing 10 sources. The breakdown of those 10 sources, I mean, it could be 8 to 10, a difference of like each time. But it basically will do a random sampling of sources to sort of answer this, which are the citations. Of the citations, the sort of the mix of those switch from week to week, month to month. Like it makes a big difference. But in general, I think it's returned right now to probably like 3 of the sources will be Reddit. 2 of the sources will be like direct brand websites. Then it'll be like Wikipedia or YouTube influencing one. And then the other ones will almost always be review websites, comparison websites, listicles. It's going to take that to sort of like have easily structured content that it can respond. And then it will give its response, which like, hey, here are the top 5 boots. Here's like a little mention of here. They'll be like, maybe for the 3rd boot, they'll be like this one, like some users complain it's a little expensive and uncomfortable, but it looks really cool. That's the kind of thing that can show up in the response. And those little like things that will dissuade someone from purchasing, like, oh, it's uncomfortable, I don't want those boots. That could be because there was an affiliate publisher who did their own personal review of this boot and said it was uncomfortable. That's now being pulled into ChatGPT to influence. So like not only is like, say like 30-40% of like the influence on that post coming from affiliates, what those affiliates are actually writing about and what they're saying, little snippets of that can be pulled out of that and then rewritten into the ChatGPT response and have a huge influence on like the sentiment of the person asking it and whether they want to buy from your brand versus someone else.
And just we had a question that follows on quite nicely. You talked about pulling from information, but how does it decide where, Jane essentially saying that, how does it decide what page to pull from, what sites to pull from? Like sometimes it pulls information from, like you said earlier, maybe Google, page 2, 3, or 4, which we'd never get to. What's influencing that? Why are they pulling from site X instead of site Y?
Yeah, I mean,
take that.
Yeah, it's a great question. The short answer is like no one knows for sure exactly how and why they're doing it. I mean, we have some theories. I spend a lot of time reverse engineering user journeys. That's like most of what I do every day is like trying to understand. And there's another question here about like verticals and things like that, looking at each vertical, each user journey, and it can vary from prompt to prompt. Depending on what type of query it is, what stage of the funnel. I think like, for example, like Wikipedia is often a red herring that we get like, oh, how do we influence Wikipedia? Well, you don't really need to influence beyond having your brand referenced in Wikipedia. It's not really going to influence like commercial decision-making in a direct way. But there's generally a mix that we come up with a theory, both a query-based theory of like the best X for Y, this versus that. We have some SOPs and lessons learned on like what tends to get pulled in. Often like this versus that would be comparison sites and things like that. And then we also have a vertical-based theory of like understanding, what is likely to be cited in certain verticals, right? So like, and a good like, if you just want to do this yourself, is like come up with some very different like verticals and very different queries, and then like look at how Reddit, for example, is being pulled in. And Reddit is like for gaming and like anything there, like Reddit is like vast majority of like Reddit top of the search results. A lot of threads all over the place, discussions in forum packs, things like that. What people are saying, there's like different search features in Google, and then getting pulled into ChatGPT and various things. But then in other verticals, like health, maybe Reddit is a little bit less relevant or prevalent. This I'm just speaking in terms of Google AI overviews. But yeah, that's kind of like the short answer is like it depends. It's not fun. It's not a fun answer, but like it does take a little bit of like, let's dig into your vertical and look at how those user journeys change, not only in Google, but then also in all these other platforms. And I think how it's kind of almost overwhelming, but I just prioritize it by like market shares, like start with Google because it's like you kill multiple birds with one stone. Like it's Google organic, Google AI overviews, and Gemini. Like they're kind of like, that's a bucket. And then I would kind of look at like ChatGPT as maybe the next bucket to look at as important and maybe where some of the future market share is going. And then like Perplexity, and there's probably like diminishing returns to try to analyze, like depending on your market share, or like, it may not be worth going after Copilot or Bing. It may be depending on, other factors, but that's kind of how I would describe it. It's like very niche dependent and vertical dependent, but kind of looking at that mix. And I think the big thing for us is looking at, because it's this consensus building exercise, there's also like a confidence interval to look at. We're talking about not only are you getting cited, and citations are kind of like a leading indicator, but aren't like a citation in and of itself isn't necessarily a reason to pat yourself on the back. It's like, what is that citation doing? And how is it? And that's like, sometimes you get like ChatGPT will give you a lot of data, or like even in AI overviews, you could click, when you're in the AI overview, click the sentiment or click the little hyperlink in the context window, and it'll show you which sources is pulling the negative. And I find that very valuable. You can start to understand how is it driving sentiment. But really what we find is we don't know exactly what it is as a confidence interval. Maybe it's like if you have 40 to 50% of the narrative coming from Reddit, YouTube, affiliate, influencer, like what the brand is saying about themselves. If you get enough consensus there, you can change the narrative from many users, or oftentimes the default is some users liked it and some users didn't. And it doesn't have a good there's messy data. Then it starts shifting if you get enough influence to many users loved it. Like most users are happy. Most users recommend it. And that's kind of one of the other optimizations we're doing. Like step one, get citable real estate into the mix. Step two, sculpt and shape that narrative and do more and follow the data to shift the actual sentiment and the words in the context window.
Yeah, I think one more thing that helps for understanding it, which is like more from like the broad like marketing strategy of how you do this stuff, is like, how do I equip the LLMs as a brand to answer questions with us being the easiest way to answer them? So it's like, if you're sort of like, how do I handle email affiliate compliance is like a thing that we think about. Like when people ask that question, if we're the only one who has like an article specifically talking in 2025 about how to handle like compliance emails with a real expert, with it being like a very like valid source in their perspective, when someone asks that question, we're probably the easiest one to cite. And therefore we're more likely to be cited in that situation because we have recent content. It's not AI slop, and it answers specifically that thing, so that when ChatGPT wants to lazily answer it, they can just cite us as a source and take some of our website's content to answer it. So a good example of that is like one of the ways that's recommended is you have an FAQ section on your website, which says like, what does your company do? Sort of like, how do they work with you? Sort of like all of the main questions that a potential buyer would ask. You have that all in FAQ because that's really easy for ChatGPT and Gemini to pull that and then answer questions with it. So I think that's a good way to think about it. Is just sort of like for any specific niche topics, how you make it really easy for them to use your content to answer it is going to be how you get cited a lot.
And just a real quick on that, like I think the long tail has gotten a lot longer to that point of like, these really long, complicated user journeys or prompts, even the starting point. And so maybe in the old paradigm, you got zero search results or zero traffic on that term, or like 50 searches per month. But now it's incredibly important. It also is showing up in multiple user journeys, maybe further down in the funnel, when someone is mid chat, adding refinements. And so it's like this big, I call it the big and small approach of like, best affiliate marketing software. Like that's that's your like hero, category, and you want the big context there. But then there's also these very long tail, like FAQ fits in there, but also even maybe micro, like short videos, or and then the content distribution strategy across platforms to answer those different questions, to kind of like make it easy for the LLMs to like find exactly what they're looking for, and then build a consensus and have confidence to say something definitive about your brand.
Perfect. I conscious of the time. We have had a few more questions in, which I'm not sure we'll get round to everyone, but I believe we're going to do. Krista's going to launch a second poll for people to do. So I want to make sure that gets out there. I do want to also ask a quick. Again, we're getting short on time, but very quick predictions. Ewan, do you want to give us a quick prediction for 2026? What you're going to see happening?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we kind of talked about it a little bit. The big one is going to be there's going to be a tightening, I think, of the policing of the sources. There's going to be a lot of like high profile data poisoning case studies, and then there's going to be a push for these LLMs to tighten up the kind of the policing of the sources. And I think kind of like connected to that is going to be what I predict as a golden age for creators, which is very counterintuitive right now. It's like my contrarian pick, but I think as we as affiliates start to figure out different incentive structures, as the industry as a whole figures out different incentive structures, because at the very basic level, what LLMs need is high signal original content. That's what they need. That's the protein they need. And it's easy to put the sugar diet in there with AI slop. But I think there's going to be, once we figure out these incentives, and there's going to be this golden age. And so if we can lean into that, I think the early adopters are going to be on all, the entire food chain are going to be well positioned if they can lean in.
Perfect.
Yeah, my prediction is just like AI, the usage of AI is going to just increase massively this year. I mean, that's not a big prediction, but I think what I want to say is like the thing to keep in mind here is that like I still talk about this sometimes with like friends and peers and stuff, and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, I asked questions of ChatGPT and it was completely wrong." And then I'll be like, "Hey, can you give me what you asked ChatGPT?" And then I'll take it and I'll put it in like my paid Gemini plan, and it will give the completely correct answer with really good nuance, with consideration of a lot of details. Like the difference between like the free solutions, which are kind of like the ones from like 6 months ago, and the $20 a month paid solutions are not very expensive, but the paid solution is so much better right now because it's like 6 months in the future of the other one. As the free ones get updated and people start seeing sort of like how accurate it is already, it's going to change a lot of how people think about this stuff. So I imagine that the acceleration will only increase here, even if the technology doesn't get significantly better. It's already at a point where the paid plans are like just truly useful.
Perfect. And like I said, we had a few questions that sadly we weren't able to get to, but obviously people can find you next week, come and speak to you in person. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about what you're doing at Affiliate Summit next week, Michael?
Yeah, so we'll be doing an in-person workshop in our meeting space during Affiliate Summit West on Monday at 3 p.m. to 3:45. And sort of my plan there is to just open up PromptWatch and talk through exactly what data we look at, how we think about it, sort of like what we did with this information, and sort of like what it means for the future. So just a really hands-on case of exactly what we're doing internally. So if anyone wants to ask questions or anything else like that, I'll be there. I know Ewan will be around too for the show. So like we're happy to answer more questions in person. Again, like the reason I'm talking about this is not something that like Everflow is specifically solving for at the moment, but this is something that I think is just really exciting for our industry and really opens up doors for us to get the like brand dollars and resources internally that has always held back affiliate marketing of like, we really need twice as big of teams. This is a good way to get it.
Perfect. Well, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing it for sure. And I believe those who joined the webinar, we had a competition running for an upgrade to a VIP pass and the Everflow wristbands, which you guys are going to notify by noon tomorrow the winners of that. So look out for check your emails for that tomorrow. A couple of lucky people there. And all that's left now is just to say thank you. Thank you for everyone joining. Ewan, thank you so much for joining. Michael, thanks for putting this together. As always, these things, we could have kept going for another hour, another half an hour or so. So thank you very much, and looking forward to seeing everyone next week.
See you next week.
Cheers.
Take care.